Okay.
Motion.
Move to approve resolution 26 FY 2021 relative to the adoption of GWA's FY 2022 operating budget.
Is there a second? Second, Commissioner Santos. Further discussion? We looked at this in the work session. Okay, call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimous. Next
Thank you, Mr.
resolution.
Chair. The next resolution is 27 FY 2021, and this is relative to amending GWA's overtime policy. Previously, we brought this before you as resolution number 14 FY 2021, and we need amendments for a couple of typographical errors in resolution resolve clause number 2, and then also for the general manager's ability to update the list of exempt and non-exempt employees. We needed to correct that to allow me to amend it for positions that are created that are both exempt and non-exempt. And then also to address the situation where exempt employees may be required to work for special assignments or projects that are in current agreements to be paid for by third parties. For example, contractors who are conducting work after hours. It's in the project specifications that if GWA personnel are required to be present, then the contractor's responsibility is responsible for payment of those hours. So this amendment would allow the general manager to approve such additional compensation for exempt employees on the basis of one time the regular rate of pay for each hour worked for reimbursement. And then lastly, for the GM to have the ability to approve compensation for exempt employees when at the same rate, one times per the regular rate of pay for each hour or portion thereof, for hours worked in excess of 40 hours when that employee assumes the role of a non-exempt employee during scheduled days off or during second and third shifts. And this is specifically to address operational personnel who may be working supervisors and because of staffing or other issues may be required, for example, to jump in the trenches and work to correct operational issues that are normally handled by non-exempt employees.
Okay. Commissioner Santos.
Yeah, I just wanted first to, the motion to accept the resolution first.
Okay, so you're moving?
Yeah.
Is there a second? Second, Commissioner Sanchez.
Okay, so I just got, these are just housekeeping questions. Gail, if you can go to the resolve section. On number 3.
Yes, sir.
So, again, I'm with you on this create position, but it doesn't add to your FTE count, right? That's the general understanding.
That's correct.
We've just approved a FTE count, so that will remain the same. Now, on number 4 and 5, not, you do a great job, Gail, but what happens if you're not around and something needs to be done? Who is the designee? How does it work? Is it the acting?
Yeah, whoever.
Because this one is clear, right? It says you only. This is just semantics.
Sure.
I don't know if it does with Grant. Can you tell me that?
Yeah, generally what it is, if Miguel is
He's on leave or he's away.
he's on leave, he would appoint one of his other managers as the acting general manager, so they would act in his place, just the same as they would for procurement. Only Miguel can
Okay.
sign procurement, but obviously,
He's
Chris
not
or
there,
whoever, somebody else would be the acting general manager in that capacity.
Okay,
Okay, I'm okay.
okay. Did we move to approve this? Not yet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we did. We did. Okay. Okay. Any further discussion? Commissioner Mchako.
Miguel, in the work session, I had asked some questions about, you had based the initial resolution on the Fair Labor Standards Act, and what you're proposing in this resolution is to be something other than that?
It still aligns with the Fair Labor Standards Act, but the allowances that we're requesting for exempt employees to be paid at one time, the regular rate of pay for hours worked over the 40 hours, or for hours worked that are to be paid by a third party. Those are, would go, I would say, above and beyond the requirements of the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Right, and the Fair Labor Standards Act designates, like, makes a differentiation between what exempt and non-exempt is, right? And so exempt are typically salaried employees?
There's multiple tests. It's salaried above a certain level, and then having a supervisory capacity.
But those tests don't achieve what you're trying to achieve here by making them eligible for overtime hours based on those tests, and therefore you're changing the policy to allow for it, or I understand that correctly?
So the tests within the Fair Labor Standards Act, there is DOL guidance which allows, for example, working supervisors, blue-collar type employees that are eligible for overtime pay. The normal, in the example for Resolve Section 5, the normal duties would not qualify that person as non-exempt. They would be exempt, but when they are taking over duties of an exempt employee, then in those limited instances, they would meet the test for being non-exempt. And so there is no provision for you to be exempt under the Fair Labor Standards Act and the technical guidance. There is no provision for you to be non-exempt in certain cases and exempt in others, but we're asking for that discretion, which goes above and beyond the requirements of the Fair Labor Standards Act.
So just so that all the commissioners and I can understand it, give me an example of when this would apply.
So we have a pressure line unit, for example, that has 6 crews composed of 2 staff members for each crew that do leak repairs. During the day shift, the supervisor, who is exempt, meets all of the tests for being an exempt employee. He's supervising, he's salaried. But for the second or third shift, which is either swing or grave, we have a main break. All of the guys that have been, the regular crews that have been working, some of them have, for example, worked more hours than is safe for them to continue working. So they are not able to respond. We don't have anybody else to respond. So the supervisor jumps in the trench and works for 4 hours, digging and repairing the pipe. And in that instance, this would allow us to compensate him at the rate of 1 times his regular rate of pay. So he's not getting time and a half. He works as a laborer in the trench, as opposed to a supervisor.
And would that also apply to any administrative positions, AGMs?
That's not the intent. The intent is for these specific situations in order to make sure that we get the critical repair work completed.
And so is there a designation in the resolution that specifies what your intent is, like what you had mentioned, a critical, is it a CTP?
In the whereases?
Because I would be okay with that, right? I would be okay if your specific intent is for those.
It's covered under the whereas on the bottom of page 2.
Page 2.
Of the resolution?
Yes, page 2, the line 27, starting there. I believe that covers the intent.
Right, but the authority, though, you could apply it to anything, right? You could apply it to any scenario in which an exempt covers for a non-exempt employee that fits that scenario. Your intention is to apply it to, like, that example that you had mentioned, but you still would have the ability to apply it in almost any scenario where the exempt and non-exempt test happens that applies, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be like line workers, like what you had given the example for, right? It could apply to
Right. but-
administrative positions.
Right. You asked me if the intent is clear in the resolution, and it is clear in the resolve part. I'm
Okay.
sorry, in the whereas part, but I concede that it's not clearly
In the
called
res-
out in
the resolve.
item 5, the resolved item 5.
Would you be open to
Sure.
specifying that?
Sure.
Okay. So then could we amend it so that the whereas clause, the resolve clause is more in line with the whereas clause?
Okay. Do you have specific language or?
Well, I'll allow Miguel to
To do
make the
the-
amendment or to suggest the language based on the intent of the resolution.
Okay,
I think we can mirror what's
What's on that? whereas?
what's on the whereas. So, yeah, how about adding the words, operations and maintenance prior to exempt on line 18? So it would read, compensate, the general manager is authorized to approve compensation for operation and maintenance exempt employees at the rate of 1 time the regular rate of pay, blah, blah, blah.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
so we need a motion to amend, well, first off, did we move this one yet?
Yes.
Okay, so then you need an amendment.
Second on this.
Okay, on the amendment made by Commissioner Machako, second by Commissioner Santos, and written by the general manager. Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, on the amendment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimous. On the main motion now, if we have no more further discussion, on the main motion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimous. Okay. Are we done with you, Miguel? Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Move to adjourn?
Move to. Second.
Adjourn.